The blood-red sun cast long shadows across the dusty main street of Willow Creek as Josephine Ellis stood on the porch of her small homestead, clutching her late husband's weathered Bible to her chest. Tears streamed down her face as she watched the horizon, hoping against hope that her husband Michael would appear there, even though she had buried him 3 months ago after the smallpox took him. The weight of loneliness pressed on her shoulders like the scorching Montana Territory sun of 1876. "Lord, give me strength," she whispered, her fingers tracing the worn leather cover of the Bible that had been Michael's most precious possession. Inside were pressed wildflowers from their wedding day and notes in his careful handwriting scriptures that had guided their short marriage. Josephine had met Michael in St. Louis before they journeyed west together, full of dreams about starting a cattle ranch in the verdant valley lands. Those dreams had withered like unwatered crops after his death, leaving her alone with their struggling ranch, mounting debts, and the crushing reality that a woman alone stood little chance of survival in this unforgiving frontier. "Mrs. Ellis," called a voice, startling her from her thoughts. "Mail's come in." She turned to see Mr. Peterson, the elderly postmaster who made deliveries to outlying homesteads once a week. "Thank you kindly," she said, hastily wiping her tears with her free hand while keeping the Bible close to her heart. He handed her a single envelope. "Notice from the bank," he said gravely. "Heard they're calling in loans all over the county. Hard times coming." Josephine nodded stiffly. "Thank you for the warning." After he departed, she sank into the porch chair, the Bible still clutched against her. She didn't need to open the letter to know what it said. The bank would be demanding payment or foreclosure within 30 days. Michael had borrowed heavily to buy cattle that had since been decimated by disease and rustlers. That evening, Josephine knelt by her bed in prayer, the Bible open before her. "I don't know what to do," she confessed to the empty room. "Michael, I wish you were here to tell me." The next morning dawned bright and merciless. Josephine dressed in her work clothes, a simple blouse and sturdy skirt, and prepared to milk their remaining cow. As she worked, the sound of hoofbeats approached her property. She straightened, brushing stray hairs from her face as a stranger rode into view. He sat tall in his saddle, face shadowed by a wide-brimmed hat. His clothes were trail-worn but clean, and his horse was a magnificent palomino that spoke of careful breeding. "Morning, madam," he called, keeping a respectful distance. "Name's Owen Lockhart. I'm looking for work and heard you might need help with your ranch." Josephine assessed him cautiously. Tall, broad-shouldered, with keen blue eyes that missed nothing. His face was weathered by sun and wind, but not unkind. She noticed the gun at his hip, worn from use but well maintained. "Who told you that, Mr. Lockhart?" "Folks in town mentioned a widow trying to keep a ranch going. Said you were determined, but might appreciate an extra pair of hands." Josephine squared her shoulders. "I can't pay much. Room, board, and whatever you think is fair," he replied. "I'm good with cattle, horses too. Can mend fences, repair roofs. Anything that needs doing." She hesitated. Taking on a stranger was risky, but the alternative was losing everything she and Michael had worked for. "There's a small cabin behind the barn," she said finally. "You can stay there. We'll try it for a week, see how it goes." Owen nodded, tipping his hat. "Much obliged, Mrs. Ellis." That first week passed in wary cooperation. Owen proved himself capable and hard-working. He fixed the leaky barn roof, mended broken fences, and helped with the daily chores. Josephine kept to herself, retreating to the house each evening with Michael's Bible, reading his notes by lamplight. On the 7th day, disaster struck. Josephine's only milk cow escaped through a section of fence that hadn't yet been repaired and wandered into a neighbor's property. By the time she discovered the missing animal, she was frantic. "The Harmons will shoot her for sure," she told Owen. "They've been trying to force me out since Michael died." "I'll get her back," Owen promised, saddling his horse. "I'm coming with you," Josephine insisted, gathering her riding skirt. Together they rode to the neighboring ranch, where they found the cow grazing peacefully in a meadow. As they approached, 3 men emerged from behind a copse of trees. "Well, look who it is," drawled Clyde Harmon, the eldest son. "The widow Ellis and her new man." Josephine felt her cheeks burn. "He works for me, Clyde. We've come for my cow." "Your cow's trespassing," said the second brother, Lucas. "Pa says that means she's ours now." Owen dismounted smoothly. "Gentlemen, surely we can resolve this neighborly like." "Ain't nothing neighborly about it," Clyde spat. "Ellis land should have been ours from the start. Your husband stole that water rights claim from our pa." "That's a lie," Josephine said fiercely. "Michael won those rights fair and square." The third brother, the youngest, reached for his gun. Before he could draw, Owen had his own weapon leveled. "I wouldn't," he said quietly. "We're just here for the cow. No need for bloodshed over an animal worth $10. The tense standoff lasted several heartbeats before Clyde laughed coldly. "Take the damn cow. But tell the widow she'd better sell while she can still get something for that worthless plot." Josephine trembled with fury as she and Owen herded the cow back to her property. "Thank you," she said stiffly once they were safely home. "The Harmons have been waiting for me to fail since the day we buried Michael." Owen nodded thoughtfully. "Land disputes are common out here. But threatening a widow isn't the act of honorable men." That night, a spring storm blew in, bringing lashing rain and wind that howled like vengeful spirits. Josephine sat by the fire, unable to sleep as thunder crashed overhead. A knock at her door startled her. Owen stood on her porch, rain-soaked and holding a lantern. "Barn roof's leaking again, madam. Thought you should know I've moved the horses into the dry section, but your feed might get ruined if we don't cover it." For the next hour, they worked side by side in the barn, moving hay bales and covering equipment with tarps. When the worst was secured, they stood in the doorway watching the storm rage. "I never thanked you properly for standing up to the Harmons today," Josephine said quietly. Owen shrugged. "Men like that prey on those they perceive as weak." "You're anything but weak, Mrs. Ellis." "Josephine," she corrected him. "If we're going to be working together in this weather, you might as well use my given name." He smiled, the lantern light softening his features. "Josephine it is, then. And I'm Owen." As they watched the storm, Josephine found herself studying his profile. There was something solid about him, a steadiness she'd been missing since Michael's death. For the first time in months, she felt a flicker of something besides grief stir within her heart. The following days brought more repairs after the storm damage. Owen proved himself invaluable, working from dawn until dusk. One evening, as they sat on the porch after dinner, Josephine brought out Michael's Bible. "He read from this every night," she said softly. "Said a man needed guidance out here where temptation and lawlessness were everywhere." Owen nodded respectfully. "Your husband sounds like he was a good man." "He was." She opened the Bible to a marked page. This was his favorite passage. "About building your house on rock instead of sand, so when the storms come, it stands firm." "Wise words," Owen said. "Especially in this territory." Josephine closed the Bible, clutching it close. "I miss him so much sometimes I can hardly breathe." Owen's eyes were kind in the fading light. "Grief's like that. Comes in waves when you least expect it." "You've lost someone too?" she asked. He nodded slowly. "My wife Sarah, 5 years ago. Childbirth fever took her and our baby." Josephine felt a surge of compassion. "I'm so sorry. I had no idea. It's why I understand what that Bible means to you," he said gently. "I carried Sarah's handkerchief for 2 years after she died. Couldn't bear to be without it." For the first time, Josephine felt a connection with Owen beyond their working relationship. They were both travelers on the same difficult path, trying to find their way forward after devastating loss. The following week, Owen rode into town for supplies. While there, he gathered information about the Harmons and their dispute with the Ellis family. He returned with troubling news. "The banker, Maxwell, is in the Harmons' pocket," he told Josephine as they unloaded supplies. They've been buying up foreclosed properties all over the county. Josephine paused, a sack of flour in her arms. So the loan being called in. Likely not a coincidence, Owen confirmed. From what I gather, Old Man Harmon has been after your water rights since before your husband claimed them. What can we do? She asked, setting down the flour with shaking hands. Owen's expression was determined. First, we make this place profitable enough that you can make your payment. I've got some ideas about that. Over the next few days, Owen introduced Josephine to his plan. He noticed wild horses in the hills beyond her property, mustangs that could be captured, broken, and sold for a good price. You're skilled with horses, he told her. Your gelding is the best trained animal I've seen in months. Michael and I both loved working with horses, she admitted. But capturing wild mustangs is dangerous work. It is, Owen agreed. But I've done it before. With your help, we could bring in enough money to keep the bank at bay. Josephine considered his proposal. It was risky, but the alternative was losing everything. All right, she agreed. But we need to work fast. The payment is due in 3 weeks. The next morning, they rode out at dawn to scout the Mustang herds. Owen pointed out a small group led by a magnificent black stallion. He's the one to watch, he explained. Get him, and the others will follow. 4 days, they studied the horses' patterns, noting where they watered and grazed. Owen taught Josephine how to construct rope corrals and set up approaches to funnel the animals where they wanted them. As they worked together, Josephine found herself watching Owen when he wasn't looking. The way his hands moved confidently over rope and tools. The kindness he showed to animals. The respect with which he treated her opinions and ideas. One evening, as they sat by the fire planning the next day's attempt, Owen caught her staring. Something on your mind? He asked. Josephine flushed. I was just thinking how different you are from most men I've met out here. You listen. You don't assume I'm helpless because I'm a woman. Owen smiled. My mother raised 4 boys after my father died. She ran our farm in Kansas single-handed for 15 years. I learned early that women are just as capable as men, sometimes more so. Your mother sounds remarkable, Josephine said. She was, Owen replied. She'd have liked you. The day of the Mustang roundup arrived clear and cool. They rode out before sunrise, setting up the rope corrals near a narrow canyon where the horses regularly passed. Remember, Owen cautioned, we need to be patient. Let them come to us. They waited silently for hours. Finally, the sound of hooves announced the herd's approach. The black stallion led his band toward the hidden trap, wary but drawn by the water Owen had strategically placed. When the moment was right, they sprang into action. Owen drove the horses from behind, while Josephine secured the makeshift gate. The stallion reared and fought, but eventually, the exhausted animals were contained. We did it! Josephine cried, exhilarated despite her exhaustion. Owen's face broke into a wide grin. You were magnificent. In that moment of shared triumph, something shifted between them. Josephine felt it like a physical change in the air, a new possibility opening before them. The next week passed in a blur of activity as they worked with the captured horses. Owen's skill with the animals was impressive, but Josephine proved equally adept, especially with the more nervous mares. You have a gift, Owen told her as she gentled the skittish bay. These horses trust you. My father raised horses in Missouri, she explained. He taught me that patience wins more battles than force ever could. As the bank's deadline approached, Owen arranged for a horse buyer from Fort Benton to visit. The man was impressed with their work. These are fine animals, he declared, inspecting the now gentled mustangs. The Army's always looking for good mounts. I can offer you $40 each for the geldings, $30 for the mares. By the end of his visit, Josephine had enough money to make her loan payment with some to spare. That evening, they celebrated with a special dinner. To your future, Owen toasted, raising his coffee cup. Josephine clinked her cup against his. To our success, she corrected. I couldn't have done this without you. As they sat by the fire afterward, Josephine found herself studying Owen's face in the flickering light. The past weeks had changed her perception of him. He was no longer just a hired hand but a partner, a friend, and perhaps something more. What will you do now? She asked softly. Now that the immediate crisis is past? Owen met her gaze. That depends on you, Josephine. Her heart quickened at the way he said her name. On me? I came here looking for work, he said carefully. But I've found something I wasn't expecting. Josephine clutched Michael's Bible in her lap, a reflex she developed when nervous or emotional. Owen noticed the gesture. I know you still love him, he said gently. I'd never ask you to forget that. Tears welled in Josephine's eyes. I feel so guilty sometimes, she confessed. When I realize I've gone hours without thinking of him. When I laugh, or feel happy. Owen reached across the space between them, his hand covering hers. Loving again doesn't dishonor what you had before. His words unleashed something Josephine had been holding back for weeks. I'm afraid, she admitted. Afraid of losing someone again. Afraid of what people will say. It's only been 4 months since Michael died. We don't need to rush, Owen assured her. I'm not going anywhere unless you ask me to leave. The next morning, Josephine rode into town to pay her bank note. While there, she encountered Mabel Peterson, the postmaster's wife and town gossip. Mrs. Ellis, she greeted with false warmth. We're all so curious about that handsome cowboy staying at your place. People are talking, you know. Josephine stiffened. Mr. Lockhart is my ranch hand, nothing more. Mabel's eyebrows rose. Of course, dear. Though no one would blame you. A young widow alone. It's not proper. The encounter left Josephine shaken. She returned home to find Owen repairing the front porch steps. What's wrong? He asked immediately, seeing her troubled expression. She dismounted, tying her horse to the rail. The town is gossiping about us. Owen straightened, wiping his hands on a rag. Does that bother you? I don't know, she admitted. Michael and I built a respectable life here. I don't want his memory tarnished. That evening, Josephine withdrew into the house early, leaving Owen to finish the evening chores alone. She sat by the window, Michael's Bible open in her lap, though she wasn't reading it. A knock at the door roused her from her thoughts. She opened it to find Owen standing there, hat in hand. I've been thinking about what you said, he began without preamble. About respecting your husband's memory. I want you to know I'd never do anything to dishonor that. Josephine stepped aside, inviting him in. It's not just about what others think. It's about what's in my heart. I loved Michael deeply. When he died, I thought my life was over. But then you came and? Owen prompted gently when she faltered. And I found myself living again, she finished quietly. Thinking about tomorrow instead of yesterday. Owen moved closer, his eyes never leaving hers. Josephine, I've grown to care for you more than I thought possible. But I'll respect whatever boundaries you need. She looked down at the Bible in her hands. Michael used to say that God brings people into our lives for a reason. That nothing happens by chance. What do you think that reason might be? Owen asked. Instead of answering, Josephine carefully set the Bible on the table and took a step toward him. I think I'm ready to find out. Their first kiss was tentative, gentle as a question. When they parted, Owen brushed a tear from her cheek. I'm not trying to replace him, he whispered. I know, she replied. And I'm not trying to replace Sarah. We're building something new together. The following Sunday, Josephine attended church in town with Owen at her side. She felt the stares and whispers but held her head high. After the service, several women approached her with barely concealed curiosity. Mrs. Ellis, won't you introduce us to your friend? Asked Mrs. Miller, the blacksmith's wife. This is Owen Lockhart, Josephine said firmly. He's been helping me save my ranch. Pastor Thomas, overhearing the exchange, stepped forward. Mr. Lockhart, we're pleased to welcome you to our community. Any friend of Mrs. Ellis is welcome here. His simple acceptance seemed to quiet the worst of the gossip. As they walked back to their horses, Josephine felt a weight lift from her shoulders. Thank you for coming with me today, she told Owen. He took her hand, unconcerned about who might see. I meant what I said about not going anywhere. Spring turned to summer as Josephine and Owen continued working side by side. The ranch began to prosper as they expanded their horse-breaking operation. Word spread about the quality of their animals, and buyers came from as far as Denver to purchase Ellis horses. One hot July afternoon, they rode to check on a new water hole Owen had discovered in the foothills. The spot was a little paradise, a clear spring feeding a small pond surrounded by cottonwoods. It's beautiful, Josephine exclaimed, dismounting to dip her fingers in the cool water. Owen joined her, sitting on a sun-warmed rock. I thought you'd like it. If we run a line from here to the south pasture, we could expand your grazing area considerably. Josephine smiled at his use of your. Despite all they built together, Owen never presumed ownership of the ranch. Our grazing area, she corrected him. His eyes met hers, serious suddenly. Josephine, there's something I've been wanting to ask you. Her heart quickened as he took her hands in his. What is it? These past months have been the happiest I've known since losing Sarah. I believe we've been given a second chance at happiness, if you want it. I do want it, she whispered. Owen reached into his pocket and pulled out a simple silver ring. Then would you do me the honor of becoming my wife? Of building a future together on this land you love so much? Joy surged through Josephine, bright as sunrise. Yes, she said. Yes, I will marry you, Owen Lockhart. As he slipped the ring onto her finger, she felt a moment of bittersweet remembrance. Michael would have liked you, she said softly. Owen nodded in understanding. And I would have respected him, for loving you well and for building this place that brought us together. When they returned to the ranch that evening, Josephine went to her bedroom and carefully took Michael's Bible from its place of honor by her bed. She held it close to her heart one last time, remembering the man who had been her first love. Owen found her there, standing in the fading light. He waited quietly in the doorway, giving her the moment she needed. I'll always love him, she said without turning. He'll always be part of me. As he should be, Owen replied gently. Josephine turned, the Bible clasped against her chest. Tears shimmered in her eyes, not of grief but of transition. Of honoring the past while embracing the future. It's all right, Owen said softly, understanding in his eyes. He knows you still love him. Josephine nodded, a sense of peace settling over her. She carefully placed the Bible on the shelf where it would remain, cherished but no longer a talisman of grief. Then she crossed the room to Owen, taking his hand. And now I love you too, she said. With all my heart. They were married in September, with the aspens turning gold in the hills. Pastor Thomas performed the ceremony in the same church where Josephine had once mourned Michael. This time, she stood there in joy, promising her heart to a man who understood that love wasn't diminished by having been given before. The Harmons continued their campaign of intimidation, but now Josephine and Owen faced them together. When Clyde Harmon and his brothers attempted to dam the creek that ran through both properties, Owen confronted them with the law on his side, having secured official documentation of the water rights. This land belongs to the Lockharts now, he told them firmly. And we intend to keep it that way. By their first anniversary, Josephine and Owen had expanded the ranch considerably. The horse-breaking business thrived, and they'd added cattle to their holdings. Their home, once a place of sadness, rang with laughter and plans for the future. On a crisp autumn evening, much like the day Owen had first ridden onto her property, Josephine sat on the porch watching the sunset. Owen joined her, wrapping a blanket around their shoulders as the air cooled. Happy? He asked, pressing a kiss to her temple. More than I ever thought possible again, she replied honestly. As darkness fell, they watched the stars appear one by one in the vast Montana sky. Josephine thought about the journey that had brought them together, the grief they'd both endured, the courage it had taken to open their hearts again. Inside the house, on its shelf of honor, Michael's Bible remained, a testament to a love that had been real and true. But it was no longer the center of Josephine's world. Instead, it had become what Michael would have wanted it to be, a cherished memory in a life filled with new joy. I was thinking, Owen said, breaking into her thoughts, that the south pasture would be a good place to build a bigger house for the family we might have someday. Josephine smiled, placing her hand over his. I'd like that, she said. Very much. As they sat together planning their future, Josephine knew with certainty that love wasn't a finite resource. It grew and changed, expanded to embrace new possibilities while honoring what had come before. She had loved Michael with all her heart, and now she loved Owen the same way, completely, but differently. The sun's last rays disappeared behind the mountains, but Josephine Lockhart felt only warmth as she leaned against her husband's shoulder, watching their land settle into evening, their future stretching before them as vast and promising as the Montana sky.